Okay, so let's dive right in. I want to take you on a tour of a really rare journal, something over a century old. It's called The Equinox, and its subtitle promised nothing less than a review of scientific Illuminism. Now that's a bold claim, right? It was trying to smash together the worlds of science and mysticism under one very strange, very fascinating cover. So I want you to picture this. It's March 1911. You've just handed over 6 shillings for this thick, crimson-bound journal. It feels substantial, important. But what in the world are you actually holding? What did scientific Illuminism even mean to the poets and the artists and, yeah, the magicians of the early 20th century? Well, that's the big question we're going to dig into. And here's what gets me, this one quote from the journal's own editorial. It just completely grounds this grand mystical project in a very, very human reality. Forget about some vast, well-funded conspiracy. This was a passion project. After 6 months of people toiling day and night to create this thing, the total profit, if every single copy sold, was expected to be about 18 pence. This wasn't just a journal. It was a labor of love, running on pure conviction, and apparently not much else. All right, so first stop on our tour is the public-facing side of the journal. Before we get into the really secret, strange science, let's take a look at what any reader just picking this up off the shelf would have found. And it's a whole world of books, avant-garde ballets, and some of the most brutal reviews you will ever read. Yeah, you gotta remember, this was not some dry, dusty occult textbook, not at all. It was a living, breathing literary and arts journal. It was packed with poetry, ads for new books, even theatrical scripts. It had this very distinct and, often polarizing personality that was plugged right into the artistic underground of its day. So you might pick it up expecting some stuffy, scholarly analysis. But no. The book reviews are just dripping with either the most scathing wit you can imagine or the most ecstatic, over-the-top praise. The poetry isn't quiet, contemplative stuff. It's bursting with what one reviewer called pagan glamour. And the drama? Forget about simple morality plays. In here, you find scripts for mystical ballets set in ancient Egyptian temples, complete with stage directions for dancers and musicians. It's wild. And make no mistake, this stuff was getting serious attention. Here's a review from the Jewish Chronicle for a book of poetry by Victor Neuburg, who was featured heavily in the Equinox. They're praising its pagan glamour and its passion, calling the whole thing eminently recommendable. So this shows you, the journal was a serious platform for artists who were getting noticed by the mainstream press. But for every piece of praise, you get a sharp, witty takedown. The London Opinion reviewed that exact same book of poetry and just called it poppycock. In this contrast, it's everything. The art in the Equinox wasn't meant to be universally loved, no way. It was designed to get a reaction, a strong one way or the other. And sometimes that reaction was genuine alarm. I think this review from a magazine called Light is my absolute favorite. After calling the poetry a gorgeous rhapsody, the reviewer adds, quote, "Fortunately, there are the police." I mean, think about that. This stuff wasn't just seen as bad art by some. It was viewed as genuinely subversive, dangerous, something the authorities really ought to be looking into. Okay, so let's move past that artistic lobby and get into the real heart of the journal, the actual instructional stuff. This is where we find the science in scientific Illuminism, a really rigorous, step-by-step training manual for the mind. So how did this science actually work? Well, the journal lays it out with almost mechanical precision. The goal? Simple enough. Purify and liberate your mind. The problem, it says, is that the mind is like a complex engine, just full of conflicting gears and tendencies. The text calls them Sankháras. So the method, the solution, is mental concentration, or samadhi. And the journal uses this brilliant analogy. You have to tune your mind with the exact same care and precision an engineer uses to tune a steam engine, making sure every single part works in perfect harmony. And to really bring this abstract idea of mental training home, the journal gives us this beautifully simple analogy. Your mind, it says, is like a restless calf tied to a post. At first, it's just fighting, pulling in every direction, trying to break free. But eventually, it realizes it's not going anywhere, and it calms down, and it lies peacefully by the post. That post? That's your point of concentration. It's just a perfect way to explain a really difficult, but ultimately achievable process. Now, this mental training also included some incredibly complex systems of thought. And the big one was the Qabalah. One of its most fascinating and, let's be honest, to an outsider, most baffling techniques is something called Gematria. The basic idea is that the Hebrew alphabet also works as a number system. So any words that add up to the same numerical total are considered mystically connected. Each one helps to explain the other. So let's see how this actually works. Here is a classic example from the journal itself. The Hebrew word for unity, which is ahad, adds up to a numerical value of 13. Okay? Now the Hebrew word for love, ahabah, also adds up to 13. So in this system, unity and love aren't just philosophically linked ideas. They are mathematically, mystically, the exact same thing. And this is a core principle of this scientific approach to mysticism. Okay, so you've read the poetry, you've been practicing the mental science, but where is all this supposed to lead? Well, now we go even deeper into the journal, to the raw, unfiltered material that represents the ultimate goal of all this training: direct, visionary experience. See, all that training we were just talking about, that wasn't just some kind of academic exercise. It was all preparation. Preparation for what, you ask? For a series of intense, direct, and often pretty terrifying mystical journeys into what the journal calls the Æthyrs. You can think of them as other dimensions or maybe different states of consciousness. And the results of these experiments, they're published right here in the journal for everyone to read. And let me tell you, these visions are not peaceful. This is a direct quote from a voice that was supposedly encountered in what's called the 14th Æthyr. It's powerful, it's poetic, and it's deeply unsettling. Chaos is my name, it says. This isn't about seeing angels playing harps on clouds. This is about confronting raw, primal, elemental forces. And it all builds to this terrifying climax in the 10th Æthyr, an encounter with a being called Coranzon, the so-called demon of dispersion. This thing represents the ultimate state of chaos, the total dissolving of your ego, the final abyss that the mystic has to cross. And it introduces itself not with some big threat, but with a number. The demon's name is the number 333. There's this cold numerical horror to it that's so different from the poetic terror of the other visions. It suggests a universe that's governed by a kind of logic that is both sublime and terrifyingly inhuman. So, we've seen the art, we've seen the science, we've seen the terrifying visions. Now we finally arrive at the last section of our tour, and this is where we ask the central question. What was all this for? What was the ultimate point of this strange and wonderful journal? And this is really the question that brings everything together, isn't it? After this absolutely wild ride through avant-garde poetry, rigorous mental exercises, and literal encounters with chaos, what was the point of the Equinox? Why would you publish all of this? The answer, it turns out, is hidden in plain sight. It's in an official announcement from a mysterious order called the AOAO. The journal's purpose, it says right here, is to select adepts. It's a test. The whole thing is designed to do two things: to strengthen the people who are right for this path, and to filter out, to eliminate, the ones who aren't. And that, right there, is the ultimate secret. The Equinox was never just a magazine. It was a carefully designed recruitment tool. The art and the poetry were the public lure. The scientific training was the curriculum. And the visionary stuff was both a warning and a promise. It was essentially a public advertisement for a secret initiatory society, all designed to attract a very specific kind of person, someone willing to undertake what they called the great work. So, if we're summing up our little tour here, the Equinox was just this incredible document. It was a chaotic blend of high art and savage criticism. It was a manual for a disciplined, almost mechanical form of spiritual science. It served as a logbook for these terrifying and profound mystical journeys. And all of it, the whole shebang, was a public veil for a secret society looking for its next generation of members. And that leaves us with one last, really fascinating question. Was all of this a genuine blueprint for a new science of consciousness? A real path to enlightenment? Or was it the ultimate piece of performance art, a literary creation so detailed, so convincing, that it actually created its own reality? The answer, just like the journal itself, is probably somewhere in that amazing, blurry space right in between.